Britain is no longer simply expanding outward. It is reorganizing power on a global scale. By the middle of the 18th century, a decisive transformation begins. Industrialization changes Britain from a trading nation into the world's first industrial power. Coal fuels engines, iron builds machines, and steam multiplies human effort. Factories rise across Britain, producing goods at a scale never seen before. But this industrial boom creates a new dependency. Factories need raw materials in vast quantities, and they need large markets to absorb endless production. Empire becomes the solution to both problems. Sea power now turns directly into economic power. The Royal Navy protects shipping lanes that connect overseas resources to British ports and British goods to global markets. Trade becomes continuous and organized rather than occasional. Ports, docks, warehouses, insurance systems, and banks expand together. Britain is no longer just sailing the oceans, it is managing global movement. The Industrial Revolution brings unprecedented productivity, but also binds Britain tightly to overseas territories. Textile mills depend on cotton. Growing cities depend on imported food. Construction depends on timber and metals. Finished goods depend on buyers across the world. Empire becomes a supply chain enforced by naval dominance and financial strength. Behind this system lies exploitation. Plantation economies in the Caribbean and the Americas rely heavily on enslaved labor. Sugar, tobacco, and cotton generate immense wealth for British merchants, ship owners, and investors. Even as moral opposition to slavery grows, these profits help finance industry and trade. Wealth concentrates in Britain, while suffering remains largely invisible to those who benefit. In India, the East India Company undergoes a dramatic change. What began as a trading organization becomes a territorial power. Through wars, alliances, and political pressure, the company gains control over land and taxation. Revenue becomes the engine of expansion. Taxes fund armies, and armies secure more territory, allowing the system to sustain itself. A private corporation ends up ruling millions of people. Company rule reshapes Indian society. Land systems are reorganized to maximize revenue. Traditional industries weaken under new pressures. Local rulers lose authority. Decisions affecting entire regions are often made by officials focused on profit and stability rather than welfare. Britain benefits enormously, while India becomes increasingly tied to Britain's economic needs. At home, Britain builds institutions to support this global structure. Banks, insurers, and investors develop advanced financial systems. Credit allows Britain to fight long wars and recover quickly. The state borrows heavily, confident that trade and colonial income will repay the debt. Power now rests not only on soldiers and ships, but on administration, finance, and paperwork. Then comes a shock that forces adaptation. Britain loses its American colonies after a long and costly war. For the first time, a major part of the empire breaks away through independence rather than conquest by a rival power. The loss is painful, but it changes imperial thinking. Britain realizes that settler colonies can demand autonomy. Strategy shifts toward controlling trade routes, ports, and territories that can be governed with smaller European populations and stronger institutions. Attention turns more firmly toward Asia, Africa, and the seas connecting them. Britain deepens control in India, reinforces the Caribbean, and strengthens its hold on Canada. Naval bases and coaling stations become critical. Empire becomes less about settlement and more about movement, logistics, and global reach. Almost constant war with France during the late 18th and early 19th centuries accelerates this process. Naval victories secure Britain's dominance at sea. Rival ambitions are blocked not just in Europe but worldwide. Britain captures or influences territories that matter for commerce, ensuring that no rival can easily challenge its global system. Settlement expands elsewhere. In Australia, penal colonies grow into settler societies, pushing indigenous populations off their land. In southern Africa, the Cape becomes strategically vital for routes to Asia. In Canada, British authority deepens, reshaping political and social life. Across regions, similar patterns emerge. Land is claimed, laws are imposed, and local societies are forced to adjust. Moral contradictions become harder to ignore. Campaigns against the slave trade gain strength. Britain abolishes the trade in 1807 and slavery itself in 1833 across much of the empire. These changes are historic, but exploitation does not disappear. New labor systems replace old ones, and colonial economies remain unequal. India grows even more central to imperial thinking. British expansion continues through wars and treaties. Administration becomes more systematic. Courts, schools, and revenue systems are reorganized. Some reforms modernize governance, but the primary aim remains stable control and dependable income. Indian manufacturing declines under pressure from British industrial goods, while India is increasingly positioned as a supplier of raw materials and a market for imports. Ideas emerge to justify empire. Many speak of a mission to civilize, educate, and modernize. These beliefs exist alongside clear economic and strategic interests. Empire can be defended as moral duty or practical necessity, depending on who is listening. For those living under imperial rule, the experience is direct. Unequal laws, distant authority, and economies reshaped for external benefit. British trade interests also push into China. Tea becomes essential to British life, but paying for it with silver drains wealth. Opium is used to balance trade, leading to violent conflicts. Wars force China to open ports and accept unequal treaties. Commercial interests are openly protected by military power. Resistance appears everywhere. Sometimes it is armed, sometimes political or cultural. Communities resist land seizures, taxation, and foreign control. They adapt, negotiate, and endure under pressure. Ireland reveals another side of empire. Political union binds it to Britain, but inequality remains deep. When famine strikes in the 1840s, suffering is immense, and British responses deepen resentment. Empire is shown to operate not only overseas, but within the British Isles themselves. Tensions in India finally erupt in 1810. Soldiers and civilians rise against company rule. Violence spreads rapidly and brutally. The uprising shocks Britain and forces a major change. The East India Company is removed from power, and direct rule by the British Crown begins. This marks a turning point. Empire becomes a formal responsibility of the state. Bureaucracy expands. Railways, telegraphs, censuses, and legal systems grow, allowing Britain to manage vast territories with unprecedented efficiency. Empire has entered its industrial phase, producing immense wealth and global influence while leaving deep inequalities that will shape the future.